What's going on, bro? Welcome back to my channel. Listen, man, there we have it. Diddy trial is basically almost over. Tomorrow, man, start deliberation for the jury to give their verdict, man, go in the room and decide will P. Diddy Combs, man, will be guilty or not guilty on all charges of racketeering, sexual trafficking, prostitution, drugs, and all type of stuff that we heard during the trial, man. This trial for me it was all over the place a little bit. You know what I'm saying? We have a lot of witnesses come up there. Then we have witnesses like Cassie, Jane Doe, and stuff like that. Really give a lot of emotional testimonies and stuff like that. And the thing is, like, do we believe every witness that came up there? In my opinion, no, not really, because the defense kind of tear a lot of those credibility of those witnesses down. You know what I'm saying? But you know, there was some emotional testimonies from Cassie. You know what I'm saying? She was the first one that really went up there because she was pregnant. And she was almost like the main character in this whole trial. And I must say, man, from the beginning to now, and Diddy is a horrible, horrible person. You know what I'm saying? Like my previous videos, like I said before, it's like, okay, he's a horrible person. But then again, the charges that they got him on charged on are those the right charges. Just for everything that went on. Like I said, he's a horrible person, but I want it to be a fair trial and stuff like that. And if he's guilty, he's guilty. And I don't have no dog in the fight. I don't know P. Diddy Combs at all. So it really doesn't matter to me. You know what I'm saying? I just want it to be a fair trial. You know, so listen, tomorrow, I don't know when the verdict might be, maybe tomorrow. That'll be very quick. I don't think it's gonna be that quick. You know what I'm saying? We got 4th of July coming Friday. So I don't know, man. But let's play some news clips of reaction from inside the courtroom that they gave both sides, prosecutors and the defense, gave their closing, and let's get into it.
Even after the fact, when she would come to initially pay me when the situation was over, everything seemed like she was in a good-natured, good headspace, and I didn't get any cues that there was possibly distress or some type of thing she was going through that might have been a negative experience. I honestly, in the moment, it just felt like this was a couple that were trying to explore certain kinks and fetishes, and I was just somebody there to try to provide the fantasy or help them create the fantasy.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Julia Janae. Thank you for following along with us. That was the so-called Punisher escort who took the stand in this case. He was speaking with our own Vinny Politan last night about his experience participating in what his hotel freak-offs with Sean Diddy Combs and his then girlfriend Cassie Ventura. And from the sounds of it, Ventura was coherent and a willing participant, a stark contrast to the government's theory that Combs used. And there's an allegation that there were drugs and violence used to support this sexual encounter. We didn't hear that from that particular witness, but let's talk about what we are hearing right now, because the defense is giving their closing argument inside of that federal courthouse. There are no cameras, but we are getting notes as far as what is happening inside. And to discuss what we are hearing, let's bring in our guest who is watching along with us. National trial attorney Michael Jafer is here. Michael, thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to list a couple of things that we're hearing about inside of the courtroom, because it's Mark Agnifilo who is delivering these remarks. And he's telling this jury that this was the prosecution's attempt to criminalize kinky sexual preferences and drug use, that the bedroom, the intimate part of this defendant's life is what is being criminalized here, that it's not racketeering. He says witnesses have been taking the stand and none of them have said, yes, I am part of a racketeering enterprise. He talks about this being a lifestyle, swingers, threesomes, but essentially it's being described as him mocking the government for an exaggerated trial. How do you think that is likely going over with these jurors?
I mean, that's a defense they have to take, but I'm baffled as to why they didn't bring any witnesses, or at least Sean Combs, to the stand to say that, right? Because here's the thing. I said in the middle of this trial that whenever you are going to try a case, if you perceive there to be a weakness in your case, you lean hard into the strength of your case. So I say that for the government, because the government knew before the trial started that they knew that the weakness in their case was the word coercion, right? How are they going to get the jury to believe that Sean Combs coerced these people, committed had a criminal sexual enterprise, and racketeered his way to the top, right? How are they going to do that? They leaned hard into the strong side of their case, which is the grossness and the sheer depravity of his conduct. They put on witness after witness, weeks of witnesses who just showed you that Sean Combs had a depraved lifestyle. They did that because they were hoping it would distract the jury when they went to the jury deliberation room on the word coercion. They wanted them to get to the word coercion by looking at the sheer grossness of his conduct and say no rational person would ever believe they were stepping into that situation. When they stepped into a situation, a relationship with Sean Combs, they never thought that he would use money as a hook for them to be part of this, and then he controlled them. So I think it's going good, Julia. It just baffles me that these very competent, capable attorneys didn't put on any witnesses. I mean, Sean Combs is a trained actor. He's acted in plays. He knows how to cry on cue, how to emote on cue. He knows how to do things that I can't do, most people can't do. So he would have been a perfect witness to carry that flag before the closing argument, because that would have been the last thing the jury heard before they heard closing.
I mean, in my opinion, I'm not a lawyer, you know what I'm saying? But you got to understand that I kind of understand why they didn't really put Diddy on his stand, because Cassie been on the stand for like, what, 4 or 5 days? Diddy would probably be on that stand for like 10 days because he's the main character in all this that's being charged. So the prosecutors would they would try to really eat him alive. You know what I'm saying? So many questions, so much things. Yeah, Diddy know a lot, but it's like you can't really prepare somebody like that. You can have all the defense attorneys all you want, man. The prosecutors have so much questions they will ask this guy, man. So it was like a 50-50 chance that they would put Diddy on the stand. Now, what he would understand, maybe that would have helped, maybe we don't. You know what I'm saying? We won't know until this week, until the verdict.
Arguments. We would have seen Sean Combs on the stand cry, beg, plead. I love these people. I would have never done that, because the way they're explaining it, it's rational in a vacuum, but the jury are not going to deliberate in a vacuum. They just saw weeks of really disgusting, grotesque evidence put on by the federal government. So we'll see what happens.
Interesting opinion that you think he should have taken the stand in his own defense. Let's actually stand by, Michael. We understand that we have Court TV legal correspondent Kelly Craft. She made it out of the courthouse and is live there on the ground in New York. Final day of closing arguments. The defense is up. Kelly Craft, what can you tell us?
Well, good afternoon to you, Julia. So, yes, I just made my way outside the federal courthouse because listening to the closing arguments by defense counsel obviously is always riveting. The closing arguments are so critical to cases, especially a case like this, where you have to have both sides really weaving together a story, a narrative as to how they want the jurors to look at the evidence. So, of course, yesterday we heard from the federal prosecutors. Today, defense counsel got underway just about 9 o'clock this morning. He is still going. There was a short break earlier, and we're hearing that the lunch break might happen in about 10 to 15 minutes. But when I just made my way outside of the federal courthouse, what Mark Agnifilo was talking about was that situation where Cassie Ventura had testified on the stand that Sean Diddy Combs had raped her. And really what Mark is doing is he's kind of brushing away all of these allegations, saying that, okay, really what happened here is Cassie was with her then boyfriend, who she's now married to, and he saw a text. So all of a sudden her story was going sideways. So she needed to come up with a reason as to why she was with Sean Diddy Combs. So she claimed that he raped her. This is, of course, defense counsel saying this in his closing argument right now. Then what he was doing is bringing up some evidence of a text that the prosecutors used yesterday from Sean Diddy Combs, which was in August, in which the prosecutors were saying this is a confession of that rape. And Mark Agnifilo brought that text up and said, nowhere in here could anyone indicate that this would be a confession to a rape of any sort, from any sort of the imagination. What it is him just saying, I wasn't able to turn you on, etc. He said, how could anyone get in there, get from that was a confession of a rape? So basically what he's doing, Julia, so far to the jurors is just trying to tear apart the credibility of Cassie Ventura and their relationship.
Oh, Kelly, you are taking us there, even though we don't have cameras. I'm so thankful that we have you to describe what's going on in there. Can you talk about what has been said that may be considered mocking or belittling of not only the government's case, but the agents who went in and did this raid? We've been hearing some reports that Mark Agnifilo has been doing that in a pretty strategic way.
He really has, Julie. And I know we made some full screens we can put up for people because, again, federal courts, so no cameras inside the courtroom. But he's really just phrasing this and putting this as not even really acknowledging a lot of the charges, just telling his own narrative, just brushing away those allegations. So he accused the prosecutors of using the racketeering count to criminalize Combs' kinky sexual preferences as well as drug use. Agnifilo said the jury heard two trials, one as told by the evidence about a lifestyle of swingers and threesomes, and the other an exaggerated trial as told by the government. And they said this right in the beginning, Julia. There is no charge here of domestic violence. Even Mark was just saying it as I walked out of the courtroom. No charge of rape. But look at these other charges that they're bringing forth. He also described Combs as a pioneering self-made black entrepreneur who championed diversity, equity, as well as inclusion. He said the employees loved him, even the ones who are suing him. And Julia, we heard that repeatedly on the stand throughout this case. Did they always like him? Mark Agnifilo said to the jury. No, but they loved him. They didn't want to leave him. And of course, Julia, that's one of the things the defense counsel is really hammering on with the jurors, because we saw time after time, each witness that got up there talking about how they really loved him. They admired Sean Diddy Combs, even the women who are accusing him of the extreme violence, talking about still being in love with him, loving him. So that's what the defense counsel is using.
Oh, yeah, Kelly, I'll never forget you're telling us about Jane hugging both sides and still living in a house that is paid for by the defendant. Thank you so much for that update. I know you've got to get back in to listen to more of those closings.
I mean, listen, I think that's what the defense really had to really do and show the jury that, listen, man, the prosecutors went into this guy's bedroom and charged him just on his private personal life, that him and his girlfriends do some swinger things, having threesomes and stuff like that. And yeah, they might get high every now and then, but it's not like he's a drug dealer just selling drugs. You know what I'm saying? They're just getting high doing sex and make them feel good or whatever. You know what I'm saying? And all the Astroglide and baby oil and stuff like that. That's maybe a lot of too much stuff that nobody really be getting into. But then again, we don't know these guys, you know what I'm saying? We don't know these celebrities like that, you know what I mean? Doing all type of stuff, but that's his personal life, you know what I'm saying? Baby oil, Astroglide, drugs and stuff, you know what I'm saying? Having threesomes and having other people come in and sleep with his girlfriend is weird, it's crazy, but then again, that's his personal life, man. So I can understand what the defense are really trying to do and show the jury in this whole situation, yo.
Lower Manhattan alongside legal analyst Terry Austin, who's been inside the courtroom pretty much every day with us. And this was for all the marbles today. The closing arguments have now finished. The trial of Sean Diddy Combs is now effectively over. We're going to begin deliberations on Monday. So what do you think of the defense's close?
I thought Mark Agnifilo, who is the lead attorney for the defense, did a good job. I think he was able to share some themes that he had with that jury. He basically said there are two stories here. One is the story of the evidence, and one is the story that the prosecution is giving you. And he went through some of the evidence and he showed some of the text. He didn't have a PowerPoint. I think that
he cherry picked.
And so I think it might have been a little easier to follow had he given the jury an outline of where he was going, because there's so much evidence. There were so many witnesses. We've been here 7 weeks. It always helps when you're pulling everything together to let the jury have a little.
Is it common for defense to kind of just wing it?
I would say most defense teams are a little less formal than the prosecution. The prosecution is the one who has the burden of proof. The prosecution is the one who has to say to that jury, look at all this evidence. We've proven all the elements of all of these claims, all of these charges. So it is common for the defense to not be as organized and to not make sure that everything is covered. But I do think that this defense team, in their closing anyway, was a little more relaxed than I might have been. I think I would have been a little more organized, particularly since they didn't have any witnesses. I think they did an excellent job throughout in crossing the witnesses for the prosecution. But I think they should have, as I said, done a PowerPoint, told the jury, look, here's our theme, but here are each of the charges, and here's why there's no RICO. He talked about it. He said there's no RICO, there's no conspiracy, but, you know, we do have those unindicted co-conspirators like KK, like D-Rock, and I think had that been on a screen and he went through it and explained why they aren't co-conspirators.
So Mark Agnifilo seemed to really try and throw a lot of water on the government's case, trying to plant seeds of doubt, poke holes in it, obviously, as they do, essentially saying the case was trash. They had terrible witnesses. The evidence was shoddy. The government did a bad job at investigating this, and the case really wasn't there. This was not John Gotti. This was P. Diddy.
And Anthony, it's okay to do that because they don't have the burden, but he went a little bit too far. And if you recall, the judge pulled him back after Maureen Comey from the prosecution made an objection. One of the things he said was, look, they are targeting Sean Combs. The
government targeted him, and that was a big no-no. Why?
That's a big no-no because there was a motion that this is not selective prosecution. And the judge said, you are not going to prevail on this because it's not selective prosecution. That's what the defense was trying to say. The prosecution argued it's not selective prosecution. We have the evidence, and that's why we are bringing these charges. So Mark Agnifilo and the defense team knew that that was an area they shouldn't pursue. He said it once, the jury got a curative instruction. He did it again after the lunch break. So I do think that that was something that he should have avoided. You can say they didn't prove their case. You can say that.
But you also got to understand that sometimes when defense lawyers or even prosecutors say certain stuff that they know the judge going to correct them in front of the jury, but after the prosecutor and defense already say something, the jurors already heard that. So that can be from this lady here's perspective that, okay, that's a bad thing. But then again, on the defense side, it can be like, listen, I know I'm gonna get in trouble a little bit, but then again, we got to get this in the jury's head. You know what I'm saying? That he was really targeted, you know? So it can go both sides, man.
That the evidence was shoddy. You can say that the witnesses were not credible, but one of the things that he went too far on was you can't say that they targeted him. And he said that. He absolutely said that.
So let's take a little bit a look at the evidence, specifically the charges, rather, how he called racketeering. This was an organization of one, not of many, as the government has charged. He said this was not sex trafficking. This was his personal life in his own bedrooms, and that essentially it was homemade pornography.
That's right. You know, he's trying to give the overall impression that the government is going into our personal lives, that they're doing too much. As it relates to the RICO, he said, look, this is something that Sean Combs is doing on his own. Cassie and Jane were his girlfriends. Mia worked for him. These were personal instances with these individuals that had nothing to do with his enterprises. And what Mark Agnifilo was saying is there are legitimate businesses here. You have Bad Boy Records. You have, Sean John. You have his alcohol companies. And that none of the people involved in those enterprises had anything to do with what Sean Combs was doing. So he was trying to make a distinction between Sean Combs, the man, and Sean Combs, the enterpriser who is doing serious business in his enterprises. And, as far as the sex trafficking, he's trying to say these were not commercial sex acts and there was no force, fraud, or coercion. And the evidence shows that there was some force, certainly as it relates to Cassie. It's very hard to get around the Intercontinental incident.
Which he said was Sean trying to go and retrieve his phone, and he took some bad drugs, which made him act like that.
Yes, and I think when you heard Comey get back up on the rebuttal, she basically said that's laughable. So I don't know how I would have honestly handled the Intercontinental incident because it's hard to explain. And I think he said what he could, that he was going after his phone, that it was domestic violence, that it had nothing to do with sex trafficking, that she wasn't forced. But I think it's hard when you're in the middle of a hotel. We know that Jules was there. He's one of the escorts. And you literally physically see Sean Combs, pulling her, knocking her down, kicking her. And that's sort of hard to refute.
Listen, man, everybody giving their viewpoints on the whole situation, closing arguments and stuff like that. Me, from beginning to now, man, I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm still undecided on if he's guilty or not guilty. You know what I'm saying? Prostitution, maybe, you know what I'm saying, might be guilty on that, but everything else, I'm not 100% sure. So I'm gonna say 50-50. You know what I mean? I'm gonna say 50-50. Both closing arguments from the defense and the prosecutors, I think, really did a good job on really showing that, yeah, this guy's a terrible, horrible person. He need to be found guilty. And the defense saying, no, just some swinger, threesome lifestyle, you know, like a drug addict, and he likes to be put on baby oil and stuff like that, you know, and let other men sleep with his girlfriend. So he just a freak, you know. So both sides really did a good job on that. So listen, I don't know if this guy gonna be guilty or not, but then again, it's like he is a horrible person. Yes, he need to be in jail for beating up Cassie and stuff like that, for the domestic stuff. But then again, it's like for the other stuff, I'm not 100% sure. I'm iffy on that, you know. But listen, man, I don't know. We're gonna see. I might go live tomorrow, doing the jury's deliberation in the room and stuff like that. So I might go live. I'm not 100% sure, but continue. Look at my channel and stuff like that. I might put up a notice or whatever, let y'all know. But until then, man, listen, y'all tell me y'all think about this whole situation, yo. Y'all think Diddy's gonna be guilty or not guilty? Let me know in the comments.